Welcome to the Interesting Documentary YouTube channel. Today, we're journeying to the beautiful yet mysterious island of Madeira. While it now entices tourists with its azure sea and lush vegetation, let's dive deeper into its history and feel that peculiar harshness, that seeming reluctance to embrace humanity. Madeira Island is the peak of an underwater volcano that has risen above sea level, formed from basalt and pyroclastic rocks. People have already discovered these islands even before permanent inhabitants settled there, sailors from the Middle East, the Mediterranean, and perhaps even the Vikings themselves. Madeira's history began in the 15th century, and it happened by chance. In 1418, two experienced Portuguese captains, led by Captain Henry the Navigator, embarked on an expedition along the African coast. However, an unexpected and powerful storm swept their ships far west of their intended course. After many days adrift on the open sea, exhausted but full of hope, they finally sighted land. It was a small uninhabited island they named Porto Santo, Holy Port, in gratitude for their salvation. After spending the winter on Porto Santo Island and regaining their strength, they sailed further southwest in 1419. Soon, an even larger and more magnificent island appeared before their eyes, covered in dense, lush forests. Legend has it that they named the island Wood Island, or known as Ilha da Madeira, due to the immense laurel forests that covered the entire territory. Imagine dark, dense forests stretching all the way to the ocean. Madeira's laurel forests are now included in the World Heritage List. However, this discovery was far from the beginning of an easy life. Upon returning to Portugal, the sailors reported their discoveries to Prince Henry. Realizing the strategic and economic importance of these islands, the prince immediately began their colonization. And from 1420, the first colonists began to sail to Madeira, mostly from mainland Portugal. These were largely small landowners, exiled criminals, and even Jews fleeing persecution. The first colonists faced incredible challenges. The island's terrain, such as the steep cliffs, deep valleys, and high mountains, seemed like a barrier to any civilization. It was as if the island was constantly trying to reclaim what belonged to it. Roads just used decades ago are now impossible due to continuous natural factors. It's no wonder Madeira is sometimes called the Pearl of the Atlantic, carved from stone. Imagine having to clear those dense forests to create agricultural land. Fire became an indispensable helper, but it also destroyed large areas of valuable timber and altered the island's ecosystem. According to legend, the forests were burned for a full 7 years, with smoke covering the entire island. However, persistence paid off. The fertile volcanic soil and mild climate were ideal for agriculture. The Portuguese sought sugarcane to Madeira from Sicily and grapes from Cyprus and Crete. Sugarcane cultivation quickly became the island's main economic activity, and Madeira sugar was imported throughout Europe, bringing immense profits. However, as demand grew and plantations expanded, a huge labour problem emerged. Initially, European mercenaries, prisoners, and local inhabitants worked on Madeira's plantations. But such large-scale, physically exhausting work required an incredible number of hands. The local workforce was too small, and Europeans were unwilling to work under such harsh conditions for low wages. This is where the darkest chapter of Madeira's history begins. Portugal, being one of the main maritime powers, had access to the African coast. Soon, the solution to the labour shortage became obvious: slaves from Africa. In the mid-15th century, the first African slaves began to flood into Madeira. Many were kidnapped from their homes or sold due to local conflicts in Africa. The Portuguese actively participated in the slave trade, transporting thousands of unfortunate people across the Atlantic. Madeira became one of the first European territories where slave labour became the essential economic engine. Life on the sugarcane plantations were unimaginably difficult and cruel. Slaves were treated as property, not as people. They worked from dawn until dusk, cutting sugarcane, processing it to the mills, and producing sugar. The work was exhausting, often dangerous, and the heat and humidity only worsened the conditions. Slaves lived in overcrowded and unsanitary dwellings, suffering from poor nutrition and disease. They were supervised by overseers who often used physical punishment to maintain discipline. People were separated from their families, bought and sold, and their culture and language were suppressed. Although the scale of slavery in Madeira might not have been extensive as in later Caribbean or Brazilian plantations, its impact was profound and devastating. Slavery left an indelible scar on Madeira's history, destroying the lives of countless people. It was a system built on the violation of human dignity and cruelty. However, Madeira's sugar dominance was not eternal. In the mid-16th century, competition from other Portuguese colonies, especially Brazil, where sugarcane was grown on an even larger scale, became too great. Brazilian plantations, with an even larger slave labour force, could produce sugar more cheaply. Madeira's sugar industry began to decline. This led to significant changes in the island's economy. Slavery in Madeira, though not abolished all at once, gradually faded with the decline of the sugar industry. The official abolition of slavery in Portugal and its colonies occurred much later, in the 19th century. One of the most impressive human attempts to tame this harsh island was the creation of levadas, unique irrigation channels. Started in the 15th century, these aqueduct systems stretched for hundreds of kilometers, carrying water from the island's humid northern parts to the drier south. This was a colossal engineering project, demanding immense perseverance and labor. Even today, walking along the Nevadas, you can feel the struggle of those first inhabitants against nature. In 1421, the city of Funchal was founded, quickly becoming an important port and trade center. The discovery and colonization of Madeira had immense significance for Portugal's great geographical discoveries, serving as a crucial stopover for ships traveling to Africa, America, and India, supplying them with food, water, and timber. It's even said that the famous Christopher Columbus lived in Madeira for a time and studied navigation before his voyage to the New World. But why did Madeira seem to resist human settlement? Primarily, it was due to its wild and untamed nature. The steep coastlines made it difficult to approach, and the rugged terrain hindered travel and communication within the island. There were no easily accessible fertile plains. Every plot of land had to be reclaimed from the forest and rocks. Second, isolation. Being far from the continent, Madeira was for a long time like a separate world. This not only meant slow movement of information and goods, but also greater vulnerability to natural disasters or diseases. History remembers more than one difficult period for Madeira. Earthquakes, hurricanes, diseases, all constantly reminded man who the true master here was. Even today, walking mountain paths or watching a storm by the coast, one can feel the power of nature and human fragility in its presence. Nevertheless, despite all difficulties, man managed to establish himself in Madeira. Levadas allowed the land to be watered and crops to be grown. Gradually, settlements, vineyards, and the world-famous Madeira wine appeared. Tourism became an important branch of the economy, opening the island's beauty to the world. Thus, Madeira is not just a wonderful holiday destination, it is also a living historical monument, telling the story of man's struggle with harsh nature, about perseverance and the ability to adapt. Even today, looking at these impressive landscapes, one can feel the island's initial reluctance to be inhabited, but at the same time, man's triumph in being able to create his home here. I invite everyone to share their impressions in the comments. Did you feel Madeira's harshness when visiting there? Which historical facts did you find interesting? Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more interesting stories.